issues of what's happening regarding Palestine and Israel, and there's this ongoing violence between really two unequal groups: the citizens on the one hand, people think South Africa in the apartheid era, and a government hell bent on the keeping the people in their places. So these issues have certainly escalated dramatically in the last few days, mainly around the Al-Aqsa precinct on the one hand, and then a specific neighborhood where they've allowed settlers to effectively invade those neighborhoods and take over places. So huge issues around that. We're going to get three different responses. We'll get an eyewitness report coming up just now with someone who's based in the Palestinian region. That comes up just now. We'll also chat to Chief Mandla Mandela, getting his thoughts on it. But let's get the official ANC position now with Minister Lindiwe Zulu, who's the chairperson of the ANC's International Relations Subcommittee. Minister Zulu, appreciate your time and good morning.
Good morning, Ashraf, and good morning to your listeners. Very good morning to you.
Thank you so much. Right. So, what's your, and I suppose when I say you, I'm talking about the ANC. Well, what's the official ANC response in terms of the goings on in that region, Palestine, Israel, over the last few days?
Well, the African National Congress, as you are aware, has always been in support and has an unwavering commitment to stand firmly by the Palestinian people. The issue here is that we've gone through this ourselves as a nation in South Africa, fighting apartheid and ensuring that we get our freedom ultimately. So what is going on in Palestine right now is a continuation, actually, of something that has been going on for a very long time. And therefore, as an ANC, we have called upon our alliance partners. We are calling on all progressive forces of the world to really stand by with the Palestinian people in their struggle. And then, of course, we condemn the determination of the Israeli regime to evict Palestinians from their homes. Not only are they evicting them and displacing them, they are also very brutal in the process of doing that. We've seen the pictures of even women being beaten so brutally. We've seen Israel forces being very brutal in removing Palestinians from their homes, particularly in Sheikh al-Jarrah, east of Jerusalem. And for us, this development really, as we said in our statement, it's not in isolation. This has been going on for a very long time.
I noticed that, the statement sort of talks about noting a concern. And, the problem is like how much concern is concern? What does concern mean?
Well, the issue is, look, we are in South Africa. They are out there. So our concern really goes beyond the concern. You will remember that the African National Congress took very firm decisions or resolutions at the conference, at the last conference of the African National Conference of the African National Congress. We actually took stronger positions than we've even done in the past by recalling the ambassador. Which of course is, as you know, to recall an ambassador, it means the relations between the two countries is not at the level of the respected level of the bilaterals where there is an ambassador of the country. You will also recall that in our resolutions, we have been calling also on the United Nations to put much more pressure on the Israel regime to stop the campaign of systematic repression and brutality against the people of Palestine. But most importantly, we have remained in solidarity, and being in solidarity also means us as the African National Congress mobilizing other voices, keeping the agenda of the Palestinian people on the agenda at all times. Even in meetings of the African National Congress, the National Executive Committee meetings, most of the time we would make the statement still calling on the Israel regime to stop what they are doing, still calling on the international community not to forget that the people of Palestine are still in a struggle, calling on the United Nations really to step up in the work that they always do, for people who are still in struggle. So we have been consistent in our call. That's what we mean when
I think you have, yeah. So, but let me pick up on this on the issue of embassies and ambassadorship. What's the official position right now between South Africa and Israel?
The decision was taken by a conference that we must downgrade the embassy, which we have done. We have already done that.
Is that enough? I mean, a downgrade, because isn't it time? I'm just thinking about, and you're quite right to bring up the South African experience. We know that when we had apartheid, there was also disinformation that apartheid is something that black people are okay with because they at least have the Transkei and they have Maputo Tswana, and they have these enclaves. So you never know how it gets spun abroad, right? But it did need people to take a stand. I'm talking globally, to say we will not deal with these people. So downgrade is not dismissed. Why not expel the diplomacy between South Africa and Israel?
Well, look, it's not as easy as that, because diplomacy also has got its own ways of doing things. But I think that at the level at which things are moving, at the time that we made that decision, is because we were still thinking that sense and sensibility might prevail, that the discussions, which are not only just being pursued by the African National Congress, these discussions about what to do with the Israeli regime, is discussions that are going on around with all progressive forces. So we were also in the hope that maybe sense and sensibility will prevail, and then we'll start having better conversation. Maybe even the occupation itself, the expansion of the already existing occupation, maybe will stop. But it's clear that it is not stopping, and therefore it will be important for the African National Congress to relook into the decisions or the resolution that was taken at conference. But you know that once a decision has been taken at conference, it will have to be looked into or reviewed during the midterm. Remember that we're still going to have the policy conference of the ANC before, and we are going to have the NGC. Maybe at that meeting of the NGC, we might take different decisions that are stronger than the decisions that we took at the 54th conference.
Now, I understand, and yes, I think by and large, ANC and therefore government has been very on side with regard to dealing with the human rights issues between Palestinians and Israel. So that I think is acknowledged. But the practical part, and that's what you're talking about now, when you were saying you'd hope they see their senses. I'm just trying to understand the logic of that, and my skepticism is based on, like, again, it was like, with respect, people sort of hoping apartheid South Africa at some stage sees the light. I mean, they're not going to do that, right? So therefore, doesn't it require, and I'm not suggesting South Africa has got all the solutions, but doesn't it require a higher level of activism against Israel? Because the hope is really beyond hope.
It absolutely does. I fully agree with you, and I fully appreciate your skepticism. And I can assure you that even with the African National Congress, whenever we are having these conversations, it's always about, it doesn't look like the decisions or the resolutions that we take are impactful enough. But when all is said and done, also, there are other considerations that we also have to make as the African National Congress. The other consideration that has to be made by our government in relation to bilateral relations that are existing. But it's very clear to us, as it is now, that we will have to escalate whatever decisions that we have taken right now, because they're not having the intended impact. So that's why I'm saying, I'm sure when we go to the NGC, we will have to really take stronger positions about it. You see, the issue here is about mobilizing the international community, mobilizing other progressive forces to act in one, because even with apartheid, you remember that it took a very long time for some who were in powerful countries. It took them time to really realize our...
I think we've just lost the minister just for a second. I just want to check with my technical with Ziad, who does all the technical controls here, whether we can get her back on the line, but maybe not. There's a couple of comments. Sean Baldio saying clearly we, South African government, are not being heard. Being consistent is one thing, but we are being ignored, and just saying, well, we are speaking up. Is that enough? Just another thought there. Your further comments, I think we're going to have to leave it at that. I'll tell you what, one of the issues, so pretty that line just dropped at the end, but one of the issues I think to think about, that the way the United Nations works, there's a Security Council of 5 countries, and the USA is one of them. And if any one of the 5 permanent Security Council members vetoes a resolution, that resolution doesn't get passed, even if the overwhelming majority of the other 4 and all other members of the United Nations vote. So you can have like a vote by whatever, 150 to 5, and then 4-1 at the UN Security Council permanent members. But that one, if they veto, that's it. And that one, in most cases, has been the USA, and has been a stumbling block for years and years and years. It just gets you thinking about like what's the merits of political diplomacy at that level if the United Nations continues to even allow the USA to have that big brother position. Something for you to consider, and perhaps your thoughts on that. Again, WhatsApp voice notes or text 061 766 0355. But to call in live, great to chat with you if you do that. 011 680 0355. So we'll get another take on what's happening. Palestine versus Israel. I should say that because really that's what it is. It's a battle between 2 unequal powers in this case here. But in this case here, we'll get a bird's eye view of what's going on right after this.
Looking to get your kick? Kiki's have now reopened on 235 Matthews Maiwa Road in Durban. Head on over for the Taste with Kick. We offer something scrumptious